Taylor's thank you post for Argentina hints at some things to come for the New Romantics. By New Romantics, I mean the collaborative effort and performance art that we're seeing Taylor use and multiple artists across all genres of music and even into other parts of the entertainment sector. I have an entire pinned video on this on my page. But if you're new here, hi, my name is Kristen. I am diagnosed ADHD autistic. My special interest is music and the music industry. Right now, I'm hyper-focused on Taylor Swift and all of the lore that surrounds her. But right now, I'm super focused on this New Romantics project because it combines my hyper-focus and my special interest in one. So in talking about Taylor's thank you post, I'm talking about when she says electric, magical memories, and soon. And those things hint to Fall Out Boy and her collaboration with them, Electric Touch. But it hints to so much more than that. So let's start from the beginning. We Didn't Start the Fire was the #1 single on Taylor Swift's birthday. And that's a song by Billy Joel, and it is a very political leaning song. We Didn't Start the Fire was #1 on Taylor Swift's birthday. That's just poetic, I think. But Billy's song is really at its core about the butterfly effect. The fire being the result, all the things that we're seeing today and experiencing that were actually put into motion years and years ago that we didn't have anything to do with. The environment being a perfect example. That kind of damage and those choices happened decades ago, but we are seeing the repercussions of it now. And that can be traced back so many ways, from the first bombs, the first wars, all the policies that were put into place years and years ago that we didn't have any control over that has led to where we are now. So when Billy wrote this song, he wrote it in 1989, and it is in a list format, and he used fast-paced lyrics, including references to 120 different significant political, cultural, scientific, and sporting events between 1948, the year before he was born, and 1989. And so in the song, it just goes through all kinds of events that were really relevant to the time. But the real meaning of the song is, we didn't start the fire, but we're still the ones trying to put it out. We're still trying to fight the fire, even though we didn't have anything to do with it. No one is more aware of these fires that everyone's having to deal with the consequences of more than millennials and Gen Z. So it makes perfect sense that Fall Out Boy redid this song in 2023. And they did all of the events that have occurred from 1989 until current day. We didn't light it, but we're trying to fight it, and then listing all kinds of things like school shootings, Venus and Serena, Michael Jordan, YouTube Kill TV, SpongeBob, all kinds of things that are relevant to what's happening. That's cultural, sports, everything. When Taylor announced the vault tracks for Speak Now, she spoke about the influence that Fall Out Boy had on her lyricism, and that's why she asked them to sing on the album. And Pete Wentz, who is their primary lyricist, has always written very charged and political lyrics, so I feel like this is kind of a hint to that. But she also says they're so cool and generous, and something about that seemed a little weird to me. Like, they're so cool just seemed like kind of a odd, kind of a dated thing to say in a post like this, especially when like her Midnight's announcement post was so like poetic, and I don't know, that sentence just kind of stuck out to me. But of course now we've gotten Suburban Legends and flush with the currency of cool, which makes me wonder if Suburban Legends is really about a group of people. We were born to be suburban legends, and I fully believe that most of Taylor's songs aren't love songs at all, that they are really other situations written in the form of love songs. She's always telling us it's not about the muses, and I think it's because it's not. These are about many other things, just disguised as love stories. She did tell us it's a love story, way back in the beginning. Fall Out Boy also has a song called The Phoenix, and we've talked about the allegory of the phoenix for Taylor before. Burns, rise up from the ashes, burns again. It's kind of like the death rebirth cycle and how she always comes back stronger. So the Phoenix says, you are a brick tied to me that's dragging me down. Strike a match and I'll burn you to the ground. We are the jack-o'-lanterns in July, setting fire to the sky. Here comes this rising tide. Okay, so we have strike the match, I'll burn you to the ground. These are very common themes. The rising tide, we've gotten tons of ocean themes ever since 1989. Not even mentioning the jack-o'-lanterns in July. We've got fire to the sky, but then the brick. When Taylor announced Speak Now, she also announced Paramore as being another one of her collaborators. When she announced the vault tracks for Speak Now, she also announced Brick by Boring Brick by Paramore. Now, before we got the actual vault tracks and we just got the titles, I made a TikTok talking about how I thought that Castles Crumbling was probably going to be a response to Brick by Boring Brick by Paramore. And if you look at the Brick by Boring Brick music video, you will see why I and many others think that that entire song is inspired by Taylor. So the brick line in The Phoenix made me think of Brick by Boring Brick. So some of the lyrics are just her prince finally came to save her, and the rest you can figure out. It was a trick and the clock struck 12. Well, make sure to build your home brick by boring brick. We've got like the lover house, the wolf coming to blow it down, the fairy tales. We've got the prince, and then We'll get your shovel and we'll bury the castle. And here's some of the other lyrics. Then when we look at Castles Crumbling, talking about how the castle's crumbling down, watches the bridges burning to the ground, ships in the harbor, screaming at the palace. Lots of parallels between these three songs. Doesn't it feel like our time is running out? Dancing alone to the beat of your heart, rising like a phoenix. These all sound like lyrics from 1989 and other tracks of Taylor's. But then we've got Release the Doves, Surrender Love. The war is won before it's begun. So speaking about doves and princes, there are a lot of lines in the Phoenix song that call back to other artists, but the doves line and the Prince line specifically reference Prince, When the Doves Cry. This is also a political song disguised as a love song. And Prince is an artist that we've discussed on my channel before. He waged a huge battle against the internet, the music industry. He is probably the most famous case of fighting for his own masters, but also for intellectual property, royalties for streaming rights. He had a lot of battles with the industry, with the media, to the point where he even changed his name. But someone hugely inspired by Prince is Questlove. Questlove, always at the scene of the crime. Hosts the Uno parties and the Clue parties that Taylor's been seen at, and he is also the drummer for the house band for Jimmy Fallon's show. Questlove has a huge history deeply rooted in music. Questlove is actually a professor at NYU, the same place that Taylor got her honorary doctorate, in Prince 101. I don't expect people to walk away with their PhD in purpleology, but I want to light a spark. And Questlove is all about how the fundamental records and artists of the 70s, 80s, and 90s influence everything that we see today. Just like the butterfly effect of the bad things that happen, there's also in music a butterfly effect of the people who, created the music in the very beginning. The groundwork for all of the music that we hear and love today. Prince is Questlove's idol. And I've made videos before talking about Prince and how there are a lot of hints and callbacks to Prince and his work in Harry, Louis, Taylor's music. There's an excellent article on Rolling Stone. There's plenty of articles, but one on Rolling Stone particularly that really goes through how Prince impacted all of his life. I patterned everything in my life after Prince. He was a guide to me in every way. He also says, I always felt that the mark of a true genius is to look beyond the hits on their records to what people call the filler. I think that a lot of us think that about Taylor's music too. The deep cuts are the best cuts. The radio hits are not really what's representative of Taylor at all. And maybe that's what drew Questlove to Taylor in the first place. He even mentions When the Doves Cry here. But I forgot to even mention the You're on Your Own from this article title. In Purple Rain, the story about Prince's life, he was literally called The Kid. So You're on Your Own and The Kid. But Quest also writes books, the most recent one called The Rhythm of Time. All of these books about music history. Now, I've been talking since the beginning about how there are so many callbacks to artists that our current artists are seeing. Just like all of the Dusty Springfield references we've all talked about in the summer, there are references to other artists littered throughout the discography of many of the artists that we know and love now. A lot of the clothing choices and symbols that we think people are using to reference Taylor are really referencing artists of the past. But the estates for Prince as well as Nirvana both cracked open the vaults and gave us a ton of new unreleased music on 10/27 of this year. 53 unreleased live tracks from Nirvana alone. If you go to Questlove's Instagram, you'll see that he constantly is posting and talking about artists of the past. He does podcasts, books, and he also just won an Oscar just this past year for a documentary. The documentary was called Summer of Soul and documented the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival, which was a free and hugely impactful music festival in Harlem. Incredible artists like Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder, and more. So he is very steeped in musical history. And keep in mind that this festival was free. Now, taking in mind all of the lyrics that we've already talked about, this is one reason that I call this project the New Romantics Project. Back to the romantics of the past, who were able to use their art to help with cultural mindset shifts and be more inclusive, which then went on to affect politics. All of those references to bricks we just talked about makes I could build a castle out of all the bricks they threw at me very interesting. Every day is like a battle, but every night with us is like a dream. So that's a lot of parallels there between the Phoenix, Brick by Boring Brick, Castles Crumbling, and the New Romantics. Remember what else the New Romantics says? The best things in life are free. Which again, New Romantics is clearly a very political song anyway, and this just makes me think again that she is referring to political cultural movements, like the Harlem Culture Festival that we were just talking about. Heartbreak is the national anthem. I mean, that's our national anthem right now, I think. But coming back to the Phoenix. There's this song by Big Red Machine, which is the project that originally started between Justin Vernon, who is Bon Iver, and Aaron Dessner, but has since grown to a collaborative project. They say that themselves on their own website. And so that can include any number of artists. And I fully believe that Taylor is a huge part of that, as well as many unexpected people that you wouldn't think of. I know, but this song in particular, I have thought for a long time, was from Aaron Dessner to Taylor. Divided the flame that you slowly gave to me. After Aaron collaborated with Taylor, he then started working with a ton of other artists and making some really impactful music. I interpret this to mean that she told him about their, goals to make big changes in the industry and in politics in general. And then he started dividing the flame, like spreading that message and putting out more messages through music. But this part really breaks my heart because while this is definitely a collaborative effort, it's very clear that Taylor is taking a huge part of this onto herself, as she is the most visible artist in the world right now. She's putting a huge target on her back. And I've thought from the very beginning that Taylor and Harry were ground zero on this. And then Jay's been talking for a few months about how Jay-Z was in it right from the very, very beginning as well. These lyrics about how do you bear the full weight? How does the long way feel? Because this has been a long journey. She's been planning this for 6 years or longer. It got set in place in 2012, but especially during Reputation, that's when this really had to go into a full plan because of everything that happened in 2016. But how do you stay in that tower? Again, we go back to the castle references. How do you reckon your own power? How does the wheel turn hour on hour on hour? But these lyrics here, I was trying to find my way. I was thinking that my mind was made to mind some very dark thoughts. Watching the fog recede. Aaron has spoken about his history with depression, and this to me recalls watching the depression recede because he had a new mission. Sigh of release in my mind. And later I would watch you and wonder what that was like to have to bear that kind of power. So I have always thought that this was a letter to Taylor from him. Now I have a theory called the Midnight's Enigma theory. And it's basically that Midnight's has a double meaning, and that besides whatever it means to Taylor, every song is also a song written by Taylor, but written from someone else's perspective. And I have videos on this. Ed Sheeran just did an album like this where he talked about it, and that's where I got the idea. But in my Enigma theory, then I can take those songs and find a ton of references, cross-reference them to somebody and kind of connect them with who that song is about. And to me, and all those connections, then Dear Reader is a message from Aaron to Taylor again. And I'll be honest, listening to it from that perspective is absolutely heartbreaking. But if you think about this as somebody who cares about Taylor in a big brother kind of way, it's heartbreaking. But you don't have to answer just because they asked you. The greatest of luxuries is your secrets, telling her to watch her back and, keep everything close. When you aim at the devil, make sure you don't miss. If Taylor is trying to take down Scooter Braun or much bigger enemies that she has, people who love her have to be concerned, because while they're all a huge part of this, she's, like I said, she's the most visible and is taking the most risks. It's very risky to be the absolute most beloved person in the world, and she was on her way to doing that for 1989 and got knocked right off that pedestal. And so, that puts her at great risk. There are a ton of news channels right now talking about how much impact Taylor has, and that she could actually run for office, or if she endorsed somebody for office, that she has the most influence of anybody in the world, the most social power, which we've talked about on my channel before, is purposeful. I believe that she's generating all of that social power, as are Harry and Beyonce, so that they can use it at the right time. And that's why they don't speak out now. They're saving it till the moment it can really matter. And then this, again, Aaron's struggling with depression. Never take advice from someone who's falling apart. I wander through these nights. I prefer hiding in plain sight. These desperate prayers of a cursed man. It just makes sense. And I'm so sorry you're never going to hear this song again the same. It's heartbreaking. So all of that together is painting the picture that I've been trying to talk about, what the goal for the New Romantics is. And I think showing those all together kind of shows a bigger picture of what's going on here. If you watch Louis Tomlinson's Silver Tongues music video, Faith has put together a thread, and I'll tag her, I'll put her Twitter here. But Louis' Silver Tongues music video, which was put out just 1 year ago today. Today's the anniversary. And she has a great thread about how this lays out the master plan. That's literally what the lyrics say. But in the video, it literally shows Billy being the first person to get into the getaway car and waiting for the others. And Billy just came out today on the 1 year anniversary. Now, Journey to the Moon is a side quest of the New Romantics project. And that is like the queer liberation of artists. I believe the New Romantics has multiple different like quests and goals, and they just all lead to the eventual liberation of people. So queer people being able to be out, not closeted, but the industry as a whole just being revamped with all kinds of changes that are already showing to be in place with like contracts and NDAs and all that kind of stuff. All the strikes going on, a cultural shift in the mindset involves multiple different avenues and sports included. But Journey to the Moon, it looks like, is in place and it is a go. Billy was the first one. I'm going to do a full analysis on Silver Tongues. But speaking of Journey to the Moon, Questlove posted this today, the same day that Billy came out on Variety. And he linked this post, which have these images. I mean, that looks like a road straight to the sky to me. I mean, that road leads straight to the sky. And these are actually planes that are filmed in like slow motion. And that reminded me of Taylor's unreleased song called I Wished on a Plane, where it literally says, I wished on a plane, like it was a star. So these planes with the street heading straight to the sky is very like symbolic to me, especially when we look at this drawing that Taylor, one of her collaborators, still had from when she wrote The Outside, one of her very original songwriting sessions before she was even signed. She wrote this song, and it's about how she doesn't fit in. But if you see here, this is the world, and I love ? And over here it says me. So that's the world. This is space, and among the stars, like, that's Taylor. I mean, Journey to the Moon very much seems like she's trying to find a way home, a place where she can belong, because it's not the world. So that's why Journey to the Moon is tied to the themes of home and going home for multiple artists, but especially Harry Taylor and Louis. So Billy was the first one, and this is what she posted to her stories right beforehand. She posted this last night, and then the article came out today. So I think that this is very symbolic of how this whole era is going to go, literally burning it down. And I don't think that all of these parallels with the Phoenix and all of the fire and the new Hunger Games movie coming out, considering that Taylor wrote 2 songs on the original Hunger Games soundtracks, I don't think that's all a coincidence. Remember, I think this project spans multiple sectors in the industry and more, and this has been in place for at least 10 years. And we can prove that by the rabbit holes in all of Taylor's music videos, as well as many other connections that I'll show you guys in another video, but that's just one simple way. But 10 years is plenty of time to forge connections with directors, writers, etc. and collaborate on like the timing of projects coming out. Just like the timing of Harry and then Taylor and then Beyonce going on like the 3 biggest tours that anybody can imagine in like decades, all staggered back to back. And then with Beyonce starting internationally, so that they have the most impact. All 3 being very like LGBTQ friendly and with varying degrees of loudness. Beyonce is being very, very inclusive and supportive of the LGBTQ. Harry, I need no explanation, has been parading the pride flag and everything all around. And Taylor is the least visible in doing that, the least vocal about doing that. But queer fans are very invested and feel comfortable there, aside from the Swifties, because of all the symbolism and everything that they see in Taylor's music. She's also the most visible, the most spoken about, and so she is generating the most social currency. But I don't think it's a coincidence that all of those things happened at the same time that we get like the Barbie movie. Same time we get movies like Oppenheimer. All of those things that are impacting culture, shifting mindsets. Like think about this summer when you put together like, you know, the year of the Barbie movie, you put together the Barbie movie, Taylor, Beyonce, even Harry. You know, you've seen all of the music that Taylor has lent to projects that are all queer themed. There is a definite like cultural shift happening. The timing of all that, I don't think is a coincidence. And the timing of this film coming out following that entire summer of like female empowerment and like that sense of community while the world is burning down around us, like I don't think that's a coincidence. Just like when Scooter was taken down, those artists had actually left Scooter over the course of months, but they released it to the media like all on the same day. So that it seemed like Scooter lost all of his clients on one day. The timing is everything. And that said a lot. It was a lot bigger news story that all the artists had left than if one artist had left. And that proves right there that there was like collaboration happening behind the scenes. And I don't think it's any different with things like this. Choosing the timing of when to release things. And the book and the film being called Snakes and Songbirds, like, don't even get me started. But it's going to have a huge impact for people to be seeing movies like The Hunger Games when we are in the midst of such turmoil internationally, in our own countries. I was the director of social services for like 9 years, and I have been talking since back then about how we are experiencing like a real life Hunger Games, and things have just continued to get worse and decline. But if you think about it, there literally is like the Capitol, which is just the super mega elite who can just shit money and literally throw it in the ocean or into the space while everyone else around them starves, and the working conditions get worse and worse, and you know, working for pennies while you can't afford food and housing. I mean, it's the same thing when there are the very poorest citizens, but at the end of the day, they are all just the capital versus them. And that is exactly what's happening in real life, is the elite versus everyone else. So yes, we are talking about millionaires and people who have influence, but I also have seen a lot of parallels in music videos that remind me of the Phoenix situation in Hunger Games. I'm talking Justin Bieber's Yummy video and Harry Styles' Late Night Talking video. Give heavy implications that there's a lot going on with artists that we don't know about, that they can scratch and claw and fight their way to the top, and then once they get there, everyone thinks that they are, you know, free and rich and happy, but they are still caged just in a different way. I think every single artist that we can think of has shown that in their music videos, in their lyrics, or just outright said it, like Doja Cat, Kesha. All of the golden cages and things like that aren't closets. Those are cages. They are gilded cages, just like the Nightingale. And then some artists, even when they get as far as Taylor and have a lot more control, are able to get better deals and, you know, things like that. They have, like her prologue said, we twist in our self-made cages, because at that point, some lies and things are already so far that even if you have the freedom, you can't go back and fix them. And so again, still stuck in those cages, entertaining the masses, but still miserable. Think of how many artists are alcoholics, drug addicts, suicidal. Like almost every artist we know looks miserable. So many overdoses. We've lost so many artists. I mean, the 27 Club, that stems from way back. This isn't even recent. And all from overdoses. Talk about Marilyn Monroe, Michael Jackson, Prince, Mac Miller, Lane Staley, Chris Cornell, Philip Seymour Hoffman from freaking Hunger Games, Twitch, Taylor Hawkins, not to mention Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Amy Winehouse, all people at the very top of their game who should have been on top of the world, but still struggled with addiction, with depression, anxiety, and overdosed. Many of those artists, nobody even realized they were struggling. Many of the hugely impactful artists of the last century. But that's why this means so much to me, because there are so many artists that have impacted my life, and knowing that these kind of things are going on in the industry, I just want to do anything I can to try to give something back. And I think that the least we can do is educate ourselves on what's really going on. There's so much evidence that these kinds of things are happening. Look at what happened to Britney. There is a literal court documentation of what has happened to artists under the X Factor and under Sony, under Simon Cowell, the Azofs. Like there's a lot of information out there, but everybody just kind of sees the surface level. And I think it's important for some of us to look deeper. But this is a huge implication to me that things are in motion. The Journey to the Moon quest has taken off. Taylor Swift said in her show this weekend that the re-recording process was like starting a quest. And I don't think she says things like that by accident. So things are in motion. Things are about to get crazy. So follow this space to keep up with everything that's happening.